Her aunt's hand was on her shoulder when she said it. A woman who builds her life around her career is building a house with no foundation. You can admire the walls all you want, but without roots, without family, without someone to come home to, what is any of it for? The table laughed, softly, the laugh of people who had been given permission by someone they trusted. Abena felt it move through her, not in her face, never in her face, but low in her chest. The particular private ache of being reduced in front of the people whose opinion of you was supposed to matter least, and somehow always mattered most. She reached for her wine glass. Steady. She counted the minutes she had left at this table. 40. She could survive 40. The empty chair beside her felt like the loudest thing in the room. She lifted her glass. The restaurant door opened. She did not look up. And then the chair moved, scraped back from the table. She felt it through the surface before she saw it. And someone sat down beside her. Close. Solid. Certain in the way of a person who has decided exactly where they are going and has arrived. She turned. Ryu Hyun-woo looked at her aunt's hand still on her shoulder. Then he looked at Abena. Only Abena. Sorry I'm late. Then quieter, just for her. You good, baby? Her aunt's hand lifted from her shoulder. The table stopped breathing. And Abena Owusu, who had been the most composed person in every difficult room she had ever entered, felt the empty chair fill up. For the first time in 4 years at this table, she did not count the minutes. This is the story of a Korean billionaire who walked into a restaurant he was never invited to, sat down beside a woman he was professionally obligated to oppose, and said 2 words that changed everything. The 3 things that happened after that dinner that neither of them planned for. And the one decision she made in a courtroom that cost her the biggest case of her career. And what came after that. But first, you need to understand who these 2 people were. Because nothing about what happened in that restaurant makes sense without knowing what each of them had built, and what each of them had quietly given up to build it. Abena Owusu was 34 years old and had spent the last decade becoming one of the most formidable corporate lawyers Seoul's international legal community had ever encountered from outside it. She had grown up in Accra and London simultaneously. Her mother's architecture firm in Ghana, her father's academic post in England. A childhood lived across 2 cultures that taught her early that you could belong fully to more than one world if you were willing to do the work of learning both. She had done the work. She always did the work. She arrived in Seoul 3 years ago on a posting from her London firm, lead counsel on a cross-border intellectual property dispute that required someone who could navigate 3 legal systems without losing precision in any of them. She had been chosen because there was nobody better suited, not because of connections, not because of circumstances, because when her senior partner reviewed the case file and then reviewed her record, the answer was obvious. She was full-figured and carried herself with the specific grace of a woman who had never once in her life apologized for the space she occupied. Her natural hair was pulled back tonight in a full, voluminous twist-out that she had spent Sunday evening setting. She wore a deep emerald wrap dress and gold drop earrings her mother had brought back from a market in Kumasi. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had built something real in a city that had not made it easy, and who dressed for dinner the way she approached everything else, with intention, without performance. What she had not built in 3 years in Seoul was any version of a personal life that satisfied her family's definition of complete. Not because she had not wanted to, but because the particular loneliness of being excellent in a place where you are also an outsider is the kind that does not leave much room. She had filled the room with work. It had been, mostly, enough. She had told herself it was enough. The empty chair at that table told a different story. Ryu Hyun-woo was 37 years old and had not made an unstrategic decision in his personal life since he was 22. He ran Hanryu Global, a technology and infrastructure corporation with operations across 8 countries and a legal team that occupied 2 full floors of a building in Gangnam. He was the kind of man who read contracts for breakfast and kept a perfectly neutral expression through situations that would make other men flinch. He had built the company from a mid-sized logistics firm his father had left him into something that bore almost no resemblance to what he had inherited. That rebuilding had taken 11 years and the complete sacrifice of anything that did not serve it. He was lean, broad-shouldered, with dark hair slicked back and natural texture at the crown. A dark ink tattoo climbed the left side of his neck toward his jaw. His hands carried the same ink across the knuckles. He wore charcoal gray suits and open-collar shirts, and had not worn a tie to anything in 4 years because he had decided, at 33, that there was not a room on earth whose opinion of him required it. He was not a man who explained himself. He was a man who made decisions and then lived inside them completely. He had made one such decision 48 hours before that dinner. He had been in the courthouse parking structure after a case review when her voice came through the open stairwell door. Not her courtroom voice. He knew that one well, had been listening to it for 7 months across a counsel table, had enormous respect for its precision and zero pleasure in what it was doing to his case. This was the other one. Unguarded. Her mother on the phone asking the question mothers ask, and Abena's voice going quiet in the way of a woman who has been asked that question too many times and is too tired, in that moment, to give the answer that keeps everyone comfortable. He had stood beside his car for a long time after the stairwell door closed. He had read her paper 18 months ago. 14 pages in a legal journal on cross-border litigation ethics, the kind of argument that most lawyers spend entire careers building toward. And she had written at 32 with the confidence of someone who had already decided what she believed and was not interested in softening it for an audience. He had kept it. He did not keep documents. He had watched her in that courtroom for 7 months and understood something about her that had nothing to do with the case. That she was the most honest person in the building. Not honest in the easy way. Honest in the way that costs something. He had found the restaurant reservation through his chief of staff. It had not been difficult. He had stood outside the entrance for 6 minutes, telling himself every rational reason why walking through that door was a mistake. Then he had walked through it anyway. The dinner ran for 2 hours. Ryu Hyun-woo was, it turned out, extraordinarily good at a table. Not charming in the performing sense. He did not tell rehearsed stories or deploy the kind of warmth that announces itself. He was attentive. He asked Abina's mother about her architecture firm in London and followed the answer with a question that demonstrated he had actually listened. He spoke to Abina's uncle about the logistics industry with enough working knowledge that her uncle straightened in his chair. He engaged Abina's cousin Afua's fiancé as an equal and made the man feel genuinely considered. The aunt, the one whose hand had been on Abina's shoulder, the one who had delivered the evening's opening sermon, spent the second half of dinner asking Ryu Hyun-woo about his company with the warm curiosity she reserved for people she had already decided to approve of. Abina watched all of this from beside him. She was the only person at this table who knew what this man actually was. Opposing counsel's principal. The most significant professional adversary she had faced in 3 years in this city. A man whose legal team had made the last 7 months of her career extremely difficult, and who she was scheduled to face across a courtroom in 4 days. She also noticed that he never claimed to be her boyfriend. He never invented a history. He simply sat beside her, and when her aunt asked how they had met, he said, "She walked into a room, and I decided I was going to know her." Which was true, in the technical sense, just not in the way her aunt was hearing it. At one point, he leaned slightly toward her while her uncle was mid-story and said quietly, "Just for her." You're doing well. She looked at him. Don't. He turned back to her uncle, not offended, almost, almost amused. Before we get to what happened outside that restaurant, and the thing he said on that pavement that she has not been able to stop thinking about since, quick question for you. If this story is already pulling at something and you want more Afro-Korean romance built around women who never lose themselves, no matter what they walk through, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. New stories drop every week on Rise of Empire, and every single one is built around real conflict and real emotion. Drop a comment below right now. Have you ever had someone show up for you in a moment when you didn't ask and didn't expect it? Tell me what that felt like. I read every single one. All right, back to Abina. Because what happened on that pavement is where this story actually begins. The family said their goodbyes at the door. Her aunt's hug for Ryu Hyun-woo lasting a full 3 seconds longer than necessary. Her mother pressing Abina's arm with the specific pressure of a woman who has been waiting for a certain phone call for years. Then, the street. The Seoul Friday night moving around them, warm and loud and entirely indifferent to private reckonings. Abena turned. She was not shouting. Abena Owusu did not shout. But the composure she had been maintaining for 2 hours had sharpened into something precise and direct. What exactly did you think you were doing in there? He was completely still, hands in his pockets, expression neutral. You needed someone to sit down. I did not need. Your aunt was going to spend the rest of that dinner confirming a verdict she had already delivered before the first course. You were going to let her. Abina stared at him. You don't know anything about my family. I know what I heard 2 days ago. The parking structure. She closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. That was a private conversation. Yes, he said, it was. A silence. The city moved around them, indifferent and alive. We are opposing counsel, she said. What you did tonight was professionally inappropriate and personally. I know what we are, he said. I also know what I saw when your aunt stood up with that glass. She had no clean answer for that. Not because she didn't have one, because the one she had was true and she was not ready to say a true thing to this man on this pavement tonight. This cannot happen again, she said. He looked at her for a moment. All right. He raised his hand. A black car materialized from across the street. It had been there the whole time, she realized, waiting. He opened the rear door, stopped. For what it's worth, he said without turning around, your aunt was wrong about all of it. He got in. The car pulled away. Abina stood on that pavement in her emerald dress and did not move for a long time. The city hummed around her. Somewhere behind her, the restaurant was still warm and full of people having ordinary evenings. In front of her, the street stretched forward into the Seoul night and offered her no particular guidance. She raised her hand for a cab. In her apartment in Mapo, she put her keys on the hook, filled a glass of water, stood at the kitchen window. Her phone had 7 messages, 3 from Afua, escalating in enthusiasm. 1 from her mother, a voice note, soft and careful. He seems like someone who pays attention, Abina. That's not nothing. 2 from her junior associate about the next day's case preparation. And 1 from an unsaved number she recognized immediately. A single message. No greeting. Your aunt was wrong. She stared at it. She put the phone face down on the counter. She picked it up again. She opened her case files on the bed. The next 4 days of court schedule. The document submission hearing on Monday. The opposing counsel's name on the case cover sheet. Ryu Hyun-woo. Hanryu Global versus Meridian Partners. Her name below his on the opposing line. She fell asleep with the files open beside her. She did not reply to the message. She arrived at the courthouse at 7:45 on Monday morning. cobalt blue structured wrap dress, hair in a full twist out, gold studs. The most prepared lawyer in the building as she was every morning, as she had been every morning for 3 years in this city. She sat up at counsel's table, reviewed her notes, her junior associate, brought coffee and 2 case queries she answered without looking up. The opposing legal team filed in at 8:10. She did not look up. At 8:17, the courtroom door opened again. She looked up. Ryu Hyun-woo was not supposed to be here. Today's session was procedural, a document submission hearing. No reason for the principal to attend personally. No strategic value in it. No precedent for it in 7 months of proceedings. He sat in the gallery, third row, directly in her sightline when she faced the judge. He did not look at her. He opened a folder. Completely professional. Completely still. As if Friday evening had not happened. As if he had not sat at her family's table for 2 hours and called her baby in front of everyone she loved. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Abina faced forward. Her voice when she spoke was precise and authoritative and carried the full weight of 7 months of preparation without a single crack in it. She was the best lawyer in that room, and the room knew it, and she delivered everything she had come to deliver without looking at the gallery once. Court adjourned. She gathered her files. Her junior associate was talking about the afternoon's preparation schedule. She was nodding, responding, already moving toward the corridor. Her phone buzzed as the courtroom door closed behind her. The unsaved number. One message. You were the best person in that room. She stopped walking. Her junior associate looked at her. Everything all right? Fine, she said. Let's go. She put the phone in her bag. She kept walking. The courthouse corridor stretched ahead of her. Long, clean, the soul morning visible through the glass doors at the far end. Her case files under her arm, his name on the cover sheet facing outward. She did not take her phone back out. She did not reply. She walked through those glass doors into the soul morning and kept moving forward the way she always had. Building, carrying, not stopping, not looking back. With something new and unresolved sitting quietly in her chest that she was not yet ready to name. The message sat unanswered in her phone for 3 days. On the 4th day, she replied. 3 words. You were late. His reply came in 40 seconds. I'll be on time next time. Abina read it, put her phone down, looked at the ceiling of her office for a long moment. She was a woman who had always known exactly where she stood, who had built her entire professional life on the ability to assess a situation clearly, identify its risks honestly, and make the decision that the evidence supported. The evidence here was complicated. The evidence here was a man who had shown up without being asked and stayed without making it about himself and left without demanding anything in return. A man who had looked at her aunt's hand on her shoulder and then looked at her like she was the only thing in the room worth looking at. A man who had called her baby in front of her entire family before she had ever given him permission to, and somehow, in doing so, had said something true. She was not the woman her aunt's toast had described. She never had been. And for 4 years at that table, she had held her composure and said nothing and absorbed every version of that verdict because she loved the people delivering it and could not find the right words to push back. He had found 2 words in 3 seconds, and they had landed precisely where they needed to land. That was the problem. That was the entire complicated, professionally catastrophic problem. 3 things to carry from this first part of the story. The first, a woman who has built something real does not need to announce it. Abina did not walk into that restaurant and defend herself against her aunt's verdict. She did not explain her life, or justify her choices, or perform a version of herself that would satisfy someone else's definition of complete. She simply held her composure and let the work she had done speak the only language it knew, the quiet, permanent language of a woman who has already proven the argument and does not need to repeat it. The second, the most powerful kind of showing up, is the kind that asks for nothing in return. Ryu Hyun-woo did not walk into that restaurant and announce his intentions. He did not explain himself or position himself or make the evening about him. He sat down beside her and stayed and left without taking anything. That specific quality, presence without agenda, is rarer than most people realize. And the people who are worth knowing always recognize it immediately, even when they are not ready to say so. The third, sometimes the thing you have been telling yourself, you do not need walks through a door you were not watching, and sits down in the empty chair, and the only honest response is the one that scares you most. And next week on Rise of Empire, he walks into her courtroom again, and this time, he brings something with him that changes the entire shape of what she thought this was. What happens when the professional wall between them develops its first real crack? Not from romance, but from something harder and more permanent than that. You are not ready. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now so you do not miss it. Drop a comment below. Has someone ever shown up for you in a moment you didn't ask for and didn't expect? And did it make things better or more complicated? Tell me below. I read every single comment, and your answers shape what comes next. Thank you for watching until the very end. Thank you for believing that a woman who has built something real deserves someone who recognizes it before she has to say a word. See you in the next story.